Superb opening preparation, time scramble when executing the moves at the last seconds before the clock runs out of the time. Also, missed opportunities for both sides, eventually finishing with a very exciting draw. All of this happened in the second round of the GMT Classical Tournament. Let's have a look what exactly went on. So we are going to start with the game of Daniel Bogdan Diak against Vincent Keimer, which probably was the most peaceful game of the round. And after c4, knight f6, knight c3, e5, we got a rather unorthodox English opening. Both of the players were improvising quite early. Bishop e7, queen b3. Diak's idea was to stop d5 from happening. So Keimer improvised a bit with b6, d4, knight e4, bishop b7. And for most of the part, both players were trying to properly evaluate if white at some point can play knight f5, capture the ducks with bishop, play f3, e4, and size a considerable space advantage backed by two bishops. Something like this happened in the game, and eventually knight f5 was played, knight e7 was played, and here white already was eyeing for this threat of f3, e4. And in the post-mortem analysis, Vincent said he definitely had to make sure he's not going to miss it, otherwise his position will be pretty bleak. So he played knight e5, f3, and met this with c6. Here white had a chance to solidify his position with queen b4, apparently a very strong move, which was not mentioned by the players. Now instead, queen a4 was played because the pawn on a7 becomes a target. d5 was a possibility to go for complicated lines. Here the young German played a5. And now after b4 takes, queen b4, this is something that Keimer confessed he didn't really expect, but he had a very powerful response, bishop a6. The pawn on b6 is dropping, but instead the pawn on c4 is captured. After rook b1, queen c5, queen b6, we saw some trades, and eventually this position reached about balanced situation. Nothing really was happening, both of the players were approaching time scramble. You could sense that Diak was trying to be ambitious because otherwise he could have captured the pawn on d5 in several moments. But it was the time trouble which in the end settled things for a peaceful outcome. Because here after knight e2, knight e5, rook d1, rook c2, also the young German reminded that he has ambitions in this game, and eventually the position liquidated into a drawn position. Now the final moves here, white did play g5, put the knight on f6 with rook c8, checkmate ideas, and that's why the simplest way for the young German to fix the draw in the game was to sacrifice the exchange and simply reach a fortress which black is easily holding. Draw was agreed. The second game of the round was Jules Massard against Yu Yanyi, where the reigning French champion had made a very nice preparation. First, it was the Chinese grandmaster who surprised his opponent with a rather rare line, which now at the top level is seen not very frequently. Short castle, bishop d7, rook e1. White wants to play c3, d4. Knight f6, c3. Here the bishop retreats, bishop g4, and immediate d4. So what basically white says, he's not afraid of bishop takes on f3 because he can always recapture the g-pawn and then simply control the center with bishop e3 and at some point perhaps bishop h3. So c takes, c takes. Here black has numerous choices, d5, e5, bishop f3. Black did play e5. Now d5 was prepared by the Frenchman. Knight e4, bishop e3, takes, takes. Bishop d7, and now he was choosing between knight a3 and knight e2, but in the post-game analysis, he said that knight e2 was something he remembered for sure. b5, black stops knight c4 and knight b6. a4 was a very nice potential exchange sacrifice because after b takes, Jules Massard had planned to play rook a4, takes, takes, queen d7, and rook a1. And it's quite interesting that this bishop b5 becomes a very serious threat, and it's difficult for black to parry it. For example, takes, takes, bishop e7. White does play first, bishop b5, bishop c6, b4, knight c4, and essentially dominates the game at the queen side. So the absence of the exchange missing doesn't even feel. Of course, the Chinese superstar was too strong to fall for this. He played bishop e7, and now they reached this position, queen a1, short castle, and b4. Black was thinking, can he at some point play queen e8, knight h5, f5? Unfortunately for him, this was probably not working because white is very fast to organize a counterplay at the queen side. So this opportunity was definitely calculated by both players. Now instead, black played h6, a tricky move to prepare knight h7 and bishop g5. Rook c1, knight h7, trading the queens, and rook c7. And despite the fact that white's double pawned here at the king side, white is still pressing because if the rooks get traded, knight b1, knight c3 could become a liability for black, and the pawn on b5 is probably going to fall. So that's why the Frenchman offered to trade rooks, and Yu Yanyi said no. The game continued as the Frenchman was seeking targets, but eventually things settled down. So black was leading a pretty good defense, simplifying the position. White got the two bishops, but in the end, he was unable to convert. Some perhaps missed opportunities were there, but you couldn't help but feel that Jules could have done slightly more than a draw in this game. And perhaps the final critical moment here, in the time scramble, the Frenchman had to decide, should he play king f3 or bishop takes on f4? It was definitely a very interesting choice. Take it here and play rook b7, cut off the king, threatening to play king f3, king g4, and b5. But it's safe to say that from black would be required some accurate play, and draw was within the range. Now instead, the Frenchman played king f3 to try to play h4, but the Chinese grandmaster was very accurate, rook d4, h4, and the final trick, g4 check. You cannot take it, knight e5, white loses the rook, and after king e3, nice trick, rook takes on b4, simplifying the game into a draw. The game was agreed to a draw right here because even if white wins the pawn on g4, it's very difficult for white to make a progress. Let's just say it's simply impossible because even if white at some point pushes h5, takes, and king takes on h5, black just waits for this pawn to roll forward, give it away for the knight, and simply claim a theoretical draw. The third game, which ended with a disastrous result, was Le Quang Liem's encounter against Amin Bassem. For Bassem, this was rather unfortunate because he started the tournament with two black colors. It is very difficult at this level. And again, things went sour for the Egyptian grandmaster right after the opening. He decided to surprise his opponent with the Grunfeld, and after bishop g2, d5, here it was the Vietnamese grandmaster who played a very interesting sideline, queen a4, clearly avoiding symmetrical structures as he's threatening to take on d5. About here, the Egyptian grandmaster started to misplay the position. He took on c4. Although this is a fairly common idea, he got some tempi for his pieces. You see black is fully developed, but it is white who controls the center. After knight c3, queen b6, e4, white already had seized solid advantage, and black was thinking at some point where he should execute the c6, e5. Rook d8, h3, white prepares to play bishop e3. Here, c5 probably was a little hasty, but then again, if you don't play c5, what do you do? d5, bishop d7, queen d1. Black is preparing to play e6, and here the Vietnamese grandmaster played a very nice idea, knight e5. Thinking about various ideas to play knight c4, bishop f4, and fight for these weakened dark squares in the center. E takes happened. Bishop e8 probably was not a very good choice because the bishop on e8 doesn't do much. Rook e1, knight c7, black tried to counter this pawn on d5 or also use the fact that the white queen is pinned so that he can play knight e6, knight e4. But after the very powerful a4, the Vietnamese grandmaster underlined that the black queen is very unfortunately placed on b6 and is subject to lose some tempi. Knight e6 was played, a5, here black cannot play queen d6 because of d takes on e6. He played queen a6, and now a very nice move, knight d3. If this knight goes to d4, the pawn on c5 falls. Also, white is threatening to take on e6. Rook c8 was played. Now, white did not take on e6 because the knight on d3 is hanging, so played bishop e3 with a simple idea. Knight e4 is knight takes on c5, then captures on d4, so black did not do this. Instead, black played c4, knight b4, queen d6. Now some captures happen. And after queen e2, position was rather terrible for black. Most likely, he had to take on e6 and try to hold this position. But it's so unpleasant because the pawn on e6 is a weakness, and the pawn on b7 also is under a constant pressure. Now instead, the Egyptian grandmaster played another mistake, perhaps the first real mistake of the game. And now after a takes, bishop g5, white's pressure increases dramatically. So there's all kinds of threats, knight e4, bishop f6, knight e5, rook a7, and it was simply too much for black to hold on to this position. Another great move for white to solidify the bishop on g5, rook d3, rook a7. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's very difficult for black to play good moves in bad position, and that's why rook d3 is just another mistake. Queen f5, and here black simply loses material. Queen f6 is knight e5, white simply wins some material, and after bishop f6, bishop e4, e takes on f7 first, bishop e4, and white simply collects an exchange. From here, the Vietnamese grandmaster was very precise. Although black has two bishops, the main problem is his weakened king. And this is what Liam was doing. He was not only comforting with the fact that he has an extra exchange, he was thinking, how do I deliver a mate? So he activated the rook, put the rook on a1, and you see that black king is always in the harm's way. Rook a8, bishop d8, and now white activates the king, and there was nothing that the Egyptian grandmaster could have done. Now the rook swings to the other side. Here, the pin is still here. King e5, threatening knight e5, and finally, Amin Bassem had to resign. A superb game, superb preparation by Le Quang Liem, who scored a second victory in a row, and this allowed him to significantly climb in the overall rankings. But everyone's eyes were on the game between Arjan Erigaisi against David Navara, because this is the game that everybody was watching and, you know, grabbing the head in shock at moments. But let's have a look from the start. Everything went on with a rather traditional approach. Navara played the Sicilian Najdorf, bishop g5, knight e7, bishop c4. This is a rather trendy line. White plays in the spirit of the Fischer attack. Fischer shows an attack, bishop c4, although including bishop g5, queen b6, bishop b3, e6. All of this has been played. There's a number of choices that white can do. Erigaisi took on f6 immediately to preserve the bishop on b3. And after knight takes on f6, queen d2, he wants to play a long castle and probably play f4, f5. As you can see, the knight on d4 and bishop on b3 are targeting the pawn on e6. Now, after knight e7, Navara played as some of the games already had been played at the highest level. He decided to spend some more tempi to eliminate the bishop on b3. And after the long castle, knight c5, rook e1 already was one of the choices for white, not the most played move. And here, in all the previous games, black had played bishop d7. However, here the Czech grandmaster played g6, a new move which had never played before, and yet it was the Indian grandmaster who was ready for this. He played e5 immediately, and now apparently d takes on e5 is a very risky choice, because after knight f3, bishop g7, white has a very strong idea, knight a4. So you can't really take it because there's no satisfactory defense against all kinds of threats and checks. And if black plays here, after queen c7, there are some issues with the back rank. So in the end, this did not happen. And after e5, Navara decided to play knight takes on b3 first and try to close the position. Erigaisi was still within the prep. He played queen f4, bishop e7, h4, hinting towards some sort of a kingside attack, h6, stopping h5 with bishop g5 counterattack. This is why here Erigaisi played king b1, bishop d7. About here, Erigaisi already had finished his opening prep, but he continued to play the moves very quickly, which in the end would be one of his most biggest mistakes of this game. So he played h5, g5, queen f3. Obviously, black is closing the action. And a5, black is trying to open the queen side with a5, a4, while keeping the option to castle short at a moment later. Another very fast move by the Indian grandmaster, queen d3. And here, Navara made a big mistake, bishop c5. So he was looking at some threats of knight takes on d5 and e6. He played bishop c5 to prevent it. And as later in the post-game interview, Navara would say, actually he realized it doesn't stop anything because white still can sacrifice on d5. Both players agreed that black had to play queen a6. And then after queen a6, Navara was not really sure, because after queen a6, white keeps the control of the b5 square, but this is probably what he should have done anyway. Now, after bishop c5, knight takes on d5 was a beautiful move by the young Indian. E takes on d6, e6. Here, white is crashing through because you cannot play f takes on e6, queen g6, let's say king d8, knight e6. This is simply too much. Rook takes on d5, 3 heavy pieces are hunting the black king, queen f6 is a threat. So, again, a big no-no for the Czech grandmaster. He was considering even to play a long castle, the position is ugly, but in the end he decided to put his faith in bishop e6. Takes, queen d5, and it seems that rook takes on e6 is killing. Because here after queen d7, black most likely cannot play king f6, rook d3, rook f3 is too much. After g4, rook e4, rook f4, and both players, they did not really see an exact way how white delivers a checkmate. They both agreed this is probably somehow winning, and engines fully agree. So instead, black played bishop e7, rook d3, rook h7, rook f3 here, rook takes on e6, and it would appear that white already is winning by force because after queen c5, rook g6, king h8, queen e6, white's threats are simply unstoppable. Rook f7, rook h6, at some point when the queen goes away, there might be queen e5 check. Maybe it doesn't feel like that, but looking from afar, but when you look at the position more closely, you realize that black is simply running out of any good moves. Now instead, what happened? Navarra picked up rook d8, which Eric Gaisi had seen from afar, and another brilliant move by the young Indian. He played queen takes on e7, as the queen on b6 for black is still under attack. Now after rook e7, rook b6, one would have thought that white is winning because he has 2 extra pawns. And now suddenly Navarra fought for unexpected counterattack. Rook e1, and it seems this mate threat is very difficult to stop. So Eric Gaisi played b4, a4, and at this moment, something incredible happened. So Eric Gaisi was having on the clock an extra hour, but he continued to blitz out the moves, which in the end he would deeply regret. So the win was here. All he had to do, he had to give a check first on g6, king h7, give a check on f7, here, and only then play b3. Why this is important? Because the white rooks are so active here, and if black now tries the same idea of a3 and king c3, white can always stop this pawn by playing either rook b7, rook a7, or rook f8, rook a8, and just secure himself a very, very nice endgame, which most likely would have resulted in white's victory. This was not really difficult, and Indian players simply had to be more careful. Now, instead, he blitzed out b3 in a moment, and after rook a1 check, a3, king c3, suddenly black played rook e7. And maybe about here, Eric Gaisi realized it's very difficult to get the rook on a5, because how do you even get there? Because if you play rook f5, here black can play a very unpleasant move, rook d1, which maybe was missed by him. Now a to a1 is a big threat, and here there are very awkward mate threats on the board. So this king cannot go anywhere, rook c5 has to be played, and now black simply promotes. So most likely something like this was missed by him, and the king on c3 is in mating net. So instead, he had to do something else. He played rook g6, king h7, rook f6, another brilliant intermezzo check by black, pushing away the white king from the passed pawn. King d2, a2, now black is threatened to play rook d1. And after rook h6, king g8, rook g6, rook g7, the time trouble was over. So Eric Gaisi had 2 hours on the clock, but most likely a losing position. So after the trade, rook g6, Eric Gaisi found the only possible idea how he could salvage the game. Give up the rook for many pawns. And he and Navarra had to think which direction to go. Unfortunately for the Czech fans, he made the wrong choice. He played king h7. He should have played king f7. And after rook takes on g5, most likely white is not really interested to enter this, black is not interested to enter this endgame, because there's a great possibility that this is a fortress. Let's say white plays f3, rook g4, gives away a couple of pawns, but it's going to be very difficult for the black king to crash through. Instead, the black could have played, let's say here, rook a5, queen, white gives away the rook, and this should be a win. because the black king is holding now the white king spot with the pawn on b7, and slowly but carefully black should be able to convert this, because these 3 pawns, they're not going anywhere. Black activates the king, and somehow this rook should be able to dominate the game. Navarro was thinking about this, and he decided to play king h7. The wrong plan, so that he keeps the king closer to this pawn. After rook g5, rook b1, black promoted to the queens and won the next rook. And here, white already was within the drawing range, and he made another mistake, another opportunity for the Czech grandmaster. He had to activate the king first. King d3 was the right move, activating the king, running forward. And if black had played rook f1, f3, rook f2, it was probably very difficult to give away a pawn with a check, but this had to be done. Play g4, rook takes on f3, king c4, and these pawns essentially don't matter, as white is trying to eliminate black's only remaining pawn and queen so that he can secure a draw. It was very difficult to find, and instead the Egyptian grandmaster played, not the Egyptian but Indian grandmaster played c4, giving another opportunity for his colleague. Here black was winning. He had to play rook h1, attacking the pawn on h5, and if white plays g4, rook h3 would have cut off the king. And that's it. I mean, these pawns are falling. They're not moving forward. King c2, rook f3, rook f2, king h6, king g5 would have been simply a matter of time before black would have won the game. Now, instead, Navarro played king h6, and one more final chance for Navarro to win the game was after Erigaisi erred once again. King e3, unfortunate move. He had to do basically anything else but not king e3. Either king c3 or king d3 was working well. What's wrong with king e3? Because black once again could have cut off the king from joining the queen side, and then these pawns at some point should fall like a domino. What happened is, after king takes on h5, white was able to fix his mistake, run forward to the queen side, and eventually one of those pawns would be rolling to queens, and none of the players could make a progress. And draw was finally agreed. A really, really crazy game. Both players could have won it, but in the end, perhaps a draw was a fair result. So here are the final results of the second round of the classical tournament. Lekwang Liem became the only winner, scoring 4 points against Egyptian grandmaster Amin Bassem, Arjun Erigaisi against Navarra, Jules Massar against Yu Yanyi, and Daniel Bogdan-Diak against Vincent Keimer finished their games in a draw. And after the second round of the classical tournament, Navarra still remains in the lead of the overall rankings in the hunt for the top prize of 10,000 Swiss francs. However, it is Vincent Keimer and Lekwang Liem who now share the second place. For Liem, the reigning triathlon champion, scoring 2 victories in a row in the classical tournament, it means he's back in business and has a real shot to win the tournament for a second year in a row. The action resumes today on Thursday, the International Chess Day, with round 3 of the classical tournament of the GMT. I think we definitely can expect some romantic chess, and every day doesn't disappoint. It brings a lot of drama. Hope you're enjoying it, watching it. Come back at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time and watch it live. Greetings, chess fans and viewers from all over the world. Biel Chess Festival, the 56th International Chess Edition, is back for yet another day. And today we are going to follow the third round of the GMT Classical Tournament. Your host today will be Angelika Volkova. I'm Grandmaster of the Nations. But first and foremost, I would like to congratulate everybody with the International Chess Day.
Huge congratulations to every single chess fan, chess expert, chess coach. We have so many chess players here in Biel. We don't only have Grandmaster Triathlon, we have so many other open tournaments, which is also exciting. Huge congratulations to all of you. And we are glad that you're going to spend this day with us at the Grandmaster Triathlon here in Biel Chess Festival.
It does feel a little bit special, right, Angelika? Because, 99 years since the establishment of World Chess Federation FIDE, because the International Chess Day is celebrating the creation of this government institution which organizes the chess activities all over the world. 1924, this is when FIDE was established in Paris, I believe, France, right? And today it marks 99th birthday. Well, guess what happens next year? 100 years, and I guess some extra activities will be again organized.
Yeah, and it is going to be also during Biel. Every year we are having Biel Chess Festival on the same day as International Chess Day. That's great.
Yeah, ever since 1966, the International Chess Day is being, again, not memorized, but
Celebrated.
Celebrated, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, once again, let's jump into the action. I believe the games are about to start, but before we do that, I think it's a good idea first to look at the current rankings and what we could expect from today's matchups.
And here we see that David Navarro is still leading the whole Grandmaster Triathlon after the rapid, where he scored 10 points together, winning the tournament with Vincent Keimer. Now he's with total 15.5 points after the draw. Yesterday it was quite a save in the game against Arjun Erigaisi. On the second place we have Vincent Keimer with 13 points. Lek Van Gliem is also together with Vincent Keimer with 13 points because Lek Van Gliem won 2 games in a row, first and second round of Grandmaster Triathlon, but he didn't do that well in Chess 960 and Rapid Tournament. We have Yu Yang with 12 points, and after that we have French master Jules Moussard with 9 points, Bassem Amin with 8 points together with Arjun Erigaisi, and on the last place, for now, Romanian Grandmaster Bogdan Daniel Diak with only 4.5 points.
Right, for the Romanian Grandmaster, things are not really working well here, but again, the distance is still pretty long. There's, how many games is it? 5 more games to be played in classical tournament, then there's the Blitz tournament, a lot of possible points to pick up, and as Lek Van Gliem already showed in the first 2 rounds, you can get a lot of points if you fight it out, and yeah, he managed to score 8 points in a row. And here are the rankings, not the rankings, but the pairings for today's round.
Today we're going to see quite some action because Vincent Keimer, who is currently on the second place in the leaderboard, is going to face Lek Van Gliem, who is actually sharing the third place in the leaderboard. We have Yu Yang against Bogdan Daniel Diak. Yu Yang won the Chess 960 tournament. For Bogdan Daniel Diak, the tournament is not going so well yet, but at least yesterday he could manage to play a draw. David Navarro, current leader of the Grandmaster Triathlon, is going to face Jules Moussard. Bassem Amin facing against Arjun Erigaisi. For Bassem, the tournament is not going that well. Yesterday, Arjun Erigaisi had a big chance to score 4 points to join the top 4 players, but we'll see what Indian prodigy prepared for today.
Well, I do believe that when you invite 8 very strong grandmasters, it's only natural that somebody will play very good and be the leader, and somebody, unfortunately, has to trail the tournament, right? So, again, the average rating of the 8 invited grandmasters is 1 point shy of 2,700 ELO, making it the strongest GMT tournament in the Biel Chess Festival's history. And again, it's quite an interesting fact that all of these 8 players, after Biel Chess Festival, they will be heading to Azerbaijan to participate in the FIDE World Cup.
Absolutely incredible. We have almost all the players who are going to play already in the second round, so they are already qualified for the second round of the World Cup. Only Jules Moussard is going to play first round, but he's quite a favorite there.
That's right. I think also what we're going to do, because before we jump into the games, there's a very, how to speak, a lot of time ahead of us. They are playing a long time control, so we're not going to miss anything for the moment. And I think we can safely also have a look at the overview of the Biel Chess Festival's program. As you can see, there's a lot of tournaments organized here in Biel. It's the closed tournament of Grandmaster Triathlon. Technically, it's a quadriathlon, but this Chess 960 tournament doesn't really count for the overall rankings. It mainly is just for fun, extra prizes, and also, in case it's necessary, it serves as a tiebreaker. We have Swiss championships, we have open tournaments, and one of them is the Master Tournament, or MTO, one of the strongest open tournaments in Europe.
Absolutely, and here we can see the winners of GMT and MTO tournaments from the previous year. If you look at Grandmaster Triathlon leader winners, we're going to see quite some familiar names, and among the winners was, of course, the Magnus Carlsen, the #1 rated in the world player, Fabiano Caruana, Wang Hao, and Maxim Vachilagraf, who won the tournament 4 times in a row. He is a record holder, I believe. And also other names such as Shakriyama Medyarov, actually, who you find also won once a tournament. She was the only one woman playing, and she managed to win it. We have the winner of the previous tournament, of the previous Grandmaster Triathlon 2022, Le Quang Liem, who is playing also today here in Biel.
Actually, it's become quite a tradition, Angelika, invite the past winners to the next year's edition. So Gata Kamsky won the tournament in 2021. He was invited last year. Le Quang Liem won the last year's tournament. He was invited this year, right? So it only makes sense to give the chance for defending champion to come back and again try to win the tournament.
Absolutely, and here we can see our live stream schedule. We are right now already on Thursday, the 3rd round of the Grandmaster Triathlon Classical Edition. Tomorrow we're going to have one more round at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time, and then we're going to have Blitz on July 22 at 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. After that, the players are going to have 1-day break, and then with 3 classical rounds to follow, we're going to finish the event with 1 round, last round of MTO on July 27.
So what exactly kind of beast is this GMT? It's a combination of 3 tournaments. It's not only a classical tournament, as right now, as you know, as you probably heard this is the round 3 of the classical tournament, 7 rounds in total. They already played a rapid tournament and a Blitz tournament, which is going to be held, as Angelika already mentioned, 2 double round robin tournaments, making it in total 28 games played. However, it's the scoring system which makes things really interesting.
And here we see the scoring system of the Grandmaster Triathlon. Indeed, players are not going to opt out always for the draws. I mean, of course, there are draws, there happen draws, but for draw, person only gets 1.5 point. So, but for the victory, you're getting the 4 points, which makes it even better for player to play, maybe sometimes risk, maybe sometimes play more adventurous and go for some complications. Rapid, we already had the Blitz. About the Blitz, we're going to talk later. It's normal scoring system. And Naxentus Chess 960, as Artus already mentioned, it's going to be a tiebreaker. So for now, we have Yu Yang-yi, who is having the highest tiebreaker in case the points will be the same.
And then there's our time control. As you can see, this is going to be quite a long day. You're going to be sticking with us, I hope, for quite some time, because the first time control is 2 hours for the first 40 moves. If they get that far, then they get extra 1 hour for the next 20 moves, and if it's still necessary, 15 minutes more for each player until the end of the game. What makes it really interesting that the players do not get the traditional extra 30 seconds per each made move, but they do it only starting move 61. And yesterday we saw some of the first time scrambles when Vincent Kammer was playing with black against Daniel Bogdan Diak. They were having some real issues, actually, to be in time to execute the final moves, but thankfully for them, the position was rather peaceful.
Absolutely, and just recall how Vincent Keimer was writing down the moves, having like 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds. It was incredible. But as he said in the interview, it was absolutely automatic, and of course he knows his next move. It's very easy. He's going to make it, but still, it's quite something normally you don't see in classical chess because there is usually the 30 seconds increment.
All right, let's now jump to the action because I see something like 7 or 8 moves can be played, and this is going to give us some good material to talk about why they are playing, what they are playing. So let's jump in right to the games.
Absolutely. And here we have the first game. Vincent Keimer, who is currently in the second place in the overall ranking, against Le Quang Liam, who won 2 games in a row. Arturs, what do you think? What was the preparation of Vincent? Because he knows Le Quang Liam is a champion of last year, and he wins 2 games in a row in the classical event. Is he scared?
No, I don't think Vincent is scared of anybody. But speaking about the preparation, I know that most of the players, when they are about to participate in a very serious tournament, they do quite a work on the opening prep. They find out what their opponents might play. They prepare some new ideas, right? For example, David Navarra, the current overall leader. He's a leader not by an accident, right? Because in one of the interviews he